So it's time for another retro unboxing on the Scene World channel. Another retro book to look at. I've actually had the time to read this one before I'm producing the video. So let's have a look inside. David John Pleasance, Commodore The Inside Story. The Untold Tale of a Computer Giant. So David was famously part of Commodore UK. There have been many rumours about how Commodore, once a billion-dollar company, at the cutting edge of computing technology, could go bankrupt. Here he gathers his own personal stories and experiences from over 12 years at the company, along with viewpoints of other senior management and engineering employees, suppliers and fans of the former giant of home computing, to expose the naked truth. This is the book that bears all. Very clever illustration on the cover, the workbench. Downtime Publishing, established to publish this book, funded by a Kickstarter. So let's have a look inside. As you can see, it's a signed copy, photo of David himself, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times. The Untold Tale of a Computer Giant, dedicated to his family, his team at Commodore UK, and in memory of his parents and younger sister. Contents. You can see the book is split into 3 parts. The foreword. There's an interesting story written by Trevor Dickinson, now obviously synonymous with Eon, someone I met at the Commodore Story premiere. Introduction from David. And so part 1 is David's story, going back to his beginnings in Great Yarmouth in Norfolk, town I know well, how he learnt to play guitar, perform in a flamenco band, picture of him on the left in his early days in Shropshire, his first marriage, emigrating to Australia. He was product sales at Scotch, including the first magnetic cassette tape. And returning from Australia is when he got the chance to join Commodore. Branch of Dixon's, one of the customers, but it was Lasky's that Commodore did a big deal with. Then Commodore moved to Corby with a specially built plant to manufacture computers built with government grants in a town where the former steelworks had closed. Other members of the Commodore staff there. A very funny image about an incident involving a fancy dress costume. The Commodore Plus 4, which David was not impressed with. The first of the interludes, talking about Spirit of the Stones, a Commodore 64 game linked to a book, Hidden Gemstones on the Isle of Wight. Moving back to Maidenhead. Steve Franklin, who came in from Granada and brought most of his own people. Then probably David's most famous story, talking to Ocean about Batman the movie and doing the pack-in deal. Promo guide to one of the Commodore shows, the Winter Show. In 1989, with David on the cover, examples of the packs that David helped oversee, and he appears himself on the starter pack for the PC there, in character. More about Maidenhead and the incentive program for distributors. So they got fancy holidays, annual conference at Clifton House. Talking about Steve Franklin, who, like so many bosses at Commodore, was soon on the out. So David moved to Commodore Electronics International, based in Basel in Switzerland, dealing with Turkey, India, Finland. We met someone who'd have a very significant influence on his life. Talking about Commodore Netherlands and the actions of a former director. David then went to Commodore in the USA, working out of Westchester. Flown there for a meeting on Concorde. Apparently he had the nickname the Doctor at Westchester. And the CD TV here with its expansion keyboard and disk drive. Product that was difficult to sell. Another funny story. David bought and restored, or paid, an expert to restore his Triumph Roadster. Had it shipped to the US and went back to the UK without ever driving it on American roads. And now talking about MIDI Annie, a very controversial figure, brought in as a consultant and then taking over, becoming in charge. The Amiga 600, and David wanted to introduce the Amiga 300. What Commodore came up with was the Amiga 600. Talking about Irving Gould, he made his fortune from shipping containers. The launch of the CD32, David's slogan, 16 will never be the same again. Lavish launch at the Science Museum in London with TV presenter Chris Evans. An infamous billboard outside Sega's headquarters in London. The slogan, to be this good takes ages, to be this good takes Sega. So the punchline was, to be this good will take Sega ages. Problems with manufacturing the Amiga 1200 and a lawsuit. Another lawsuit, this time against PC Week. And then the sad story of how David and Colin Proudfoot and Commodore UK worked so hard to perform a management buyout of the assets of Commodore and continue making Amigas that fell through. Another interlude, Chelsea FC, the British soccer team, sponsored by Commodore then Amiga, and also Commodore Germany sponsored Bayern Munich, and Commodore France sponsored Paris Saint-Germain. After Commodore, David talks about his move into music, about his family life, about business he was involved in, and coming back to the UK. And that's the end of part one. So the first 150 pages of the book talking about David and his memories. Part two is a series of interesting memoirs from other Commodore people. The first one from the legendary RJ Mical took a long while to arrive and held up publication, but is full of very funny moments and some interesting insider information, and how, in particular, RJ blames the file system and not Commodore's management for the failure of the Amiga. And he's full of tributes for his former colleagues. Famous Guru meditation era. RJ. The second chapter then from Dave Haynie and other of the brilliant Commodore engineers. The Amiga 3000 tower. Light falling in Westchester. Metaphor for the closure. IBM PC Junior, devised by Bill Sines, who was for a short time in charge of Commodore engineering. Dave, of course, produced the Deathbed Vigil video and later DVD, The Last Days of Commodore. There's a picture of Dave himself. Tim Chaney, who was there in Commodore UK in sales in the early days before moving to US Gold. Memories from Gal Wellington, who, although being American, was actually employed at Commodore UK, heavily involved in the software side of the company at that time, building relations with the developers and market. Then deeply involved in marketing the Amiga and the developer conferences, DevCons. Caricature of Gale there. Very funny anecdote of one developer conference where members of the team pretended to be lemmings, walked across the stage and jumped off. Photo with Irving Gould, and Gal has some interesting things to say about Irving in that chapter. The end of her time at Commodore. Commodore Germany, talking here with Peter Kittel, who was involved in the support side for many years. Beth Richard, who worked in hardware design, in chip manufacture, particularly in the CDTV, CD32 era. And some fascinating technical details there of how things worked. There's a rude word on that page, I won't show that. Her career then at Compact, Texas Instruments, Castor, working with Jerry Ellsworth on the augmented reality project that unfortunately fell through. Beth is now at Facebook working on Oculus VR. Miguel de Gracia from Spain, who worked at Commodore in the UK. Joe Benzing, who worked on presentations and sales at Commodore UK. Another very interesting chapter there. Francois Lyonnais, how the Amiga changed my life, how he went into programming, and then worked on two amazing products, SDLS and Amos, which are in the process of being relaunched, and heard news about that this week for new machines. Wim Mulders started out at Commodore Belgium, ended up at Commodore in the Netherlands, and has some bad things to say about what happened with the management there. Kieran Sumner, brother of the perhaps more famous Kelly Sumner, who was already working at Commodore. He joined, again talking about sales and the business division, working on the Commodore PC line. Photo of Kieran today. Love letter to Aros. So, Stephen Jones helped build the Checkmate A1500. And Checkmate then promoted several other programs, and basically describes how Commodore saw them as a competitor rather than helping sales. Siamese system allowing you to use Macintosh software on an Amiga platform. Talking about another failed meeting with Gateway, Kairos, the Amiga Research Operating System, which is still in development. And talking about why he's still a fan of the Amiga. And then another fascinating chapter, Carlo Pastore. And he's talking about the Commodore 65, which only ever reached prototype form, never went to market. Picture of one of those prototypes, about 200 produced. Technical specs, Victor and Bill chips, motherboard, circuit diagrams. It's a fascinating chapter for what could have been. And I'm talking about the Mega 65 project, trying to revive it. Part 3, the appendix, some other quotes and short pieces. Go Bracey from Motion Software, guy I know well. Martin Brown, Team 17. Mark Cale of System 3. David Gardner, Electronic Arts. My good friend John Hare from Sensible Software, talking about how important the Amiga was to them. Randall Jessup, another Commodore engineer. Managing Director of Toptronics anyway. Mike West of SDL. The acknowledgements, people involved in the book and people who have helped along the way. And then finally, the backers, so people from back the book on Kickstarter, and I'm on that page there. So, what we have then is a fascinating record. That's a photo credits last piece there. Of not only David's time at Commodore, but a lot more detail on what went wrong, why Commodore went bankrupt, and it is well worth a read. There is an accompanying Blu-ray. The audiobook version is in production, and I'll put some links in the video description. So if you haven't ordered it yet, or you're interested, this is definitely worth checking out, even if you're not a big Amiga fan, because it tells a lot of interesting tales about Commodore. So keep watching the Scene World channel for more unboxing videos.